Today, fairly simple, just basically airport marking, signs, lines on the ground, fairly easy stuff, hopefully. This is one of those topics where if you're one of those people who we cut and teach that integrated flight training where you learn this as well as also fly. Those of you who fly, this should be no problem because you see this every day. Whereas this is one of those things that obviously it's just a little more memorization if you've never actually flown an airplane before. So if you haven't already, get up in an airplane and see some of the stuff because it's all over our airport and all over every other airport. And obviously we're going to learn about signs and everything. All right, types of airports, a couple different types here. Usually most are going to be a combination of a couple here. We got towered and untowered, civil, military, federal, and private, and we'll go into what each of these means a little more specifically here. So towered, these are going to be the busier ones that require a tower because they don't trust us to avoid each other. A lot more people coming in, a lot more people coming out, a lot more movement. Non-towered is going to be somewhere like here, no control tower. It's all up to us to what's called see and avoid. We make radio calls and everything. We just basically make our own rules. And what we try to follow the laid out rules, but not everyone does that. But we, especially at least in the flight school like here, we're going to teach you the correct way to fly. Like I said, they're kind of pilot control. We talk to each other, radio, and just talk to each other. No mediator in between telling us what to do or how to do it. Civil is one that we're going to be flying in. They're open to the public, basically. They can be towered or non-towered. So here is a civil airport non-towered. You go down to Wilmington, straight south of here. That's going to be a civil towered airport. All right. And finally, military. So obviously, the military bases like Dover or something, or go down to NASA, those are going to be military or federal controlled places that we shouldn't end up at unless you have a really big issue. And finally, the fun ones are the private ones. So if you decide you have enough money to go out and buy your own or build your own one day, that's my plan, just saying. You guys are all welcome. I believe this is a picture of John Travolta's house. So you can own an airport if you feel like it and have the funds to do so. We can also fly to those, assuming you have permission from the owner. Most of the time, they're going to be little tiny grass strips just in someone's backyard, but sometimes they actually have nice paved ones. All right, a couple different ways we can learn about these airports before we actually go to them. These are a couple of the examples. So in aeronautical charts, when you're planning your flight, you'll look at charting and you can get some basic information about the airport. We have something called Chart Supplement, which is kind of like a little deeper dive. It has a bunch of text talking about the airport, what kind of services it has, and we'll see more examples of that later. Notice to air missions actually was just changed to Notice to Airmen by Donald Trump a couple of days ago. It was Airmen a couple of years ago, and then Biden switched to Air Missions. Now it's back to Airmen, so this is wrong as of the current date. Then we have ATIS and AWOS, which is, we'll talk about those, but those are basically up-to-date, constant weather information about your airports. So let's take a look at some of the examples of these. So if you pull out a chart and you're planning a flight, this is what an airport on it would look like. It's basically like a map. So we're kind of decode what we're looking at here. Airport name is going to be the first line here. So here's the airport. It's Minot International. And then it's identifier. So if you go to look it up anywhere, it's going to be MOT. Just like Philadelphia would be PHL, and here's MQS. They all have their 3-digit identifiers. So we have Minot International, MOT, and type of airspace here. Oops. Type / structure / design. We can kind of tell if this is towered or untowered or civil or not, kind of based on what it looks like. So in this case, it's blue, which means it's towered, and has the dashes around it, which means it's Delta class airspace, which we're not going to get into what a Delta is yet, but basically it's a small towered airport. Airport elevation is going to be this 1716 number, so that's how many feet above sea level this airport is at. Length of longest runway, that's 77 right there, means our longest runway is going to be 7,700 feet. Tower, CTAF, and UCOM, so there's a bunch of frequencies here. So here would be their tower frequency, 118.2. So that's what you're going to be talking to the control tower on. And in some cases, you'll have the Unicom here. So if you need fuel or something, you talk to 122.95. ATIS or AWOS, we'll talk about that later again, but that's going to be your weather. You'll get the weather on this ASOS frequency, 118.725. Weather or not has a beacon, so if you're flying at night, if you can find this airport or not, that's what the little star means. And the runway lighting type, you see there's a little C and the little star down, or the C there means that at night you can pilot control, and the L means it's part-time lighting there. And we'll talk about that a little more, all the lighting stuff later.
What's the green dot?
That's just the center of the screen, I guess.
Oh,
That's not part of the actual thing, no. Whoever took the screenshot didn't move the cursor out of the way. So every airport's gonna look like this. I don't know if you guys ever played around with it. SkyVector is one of the kind of sources we use. If I can type it. SkyVector is your free aeronautical charts, and this is what it looks like. So here's our busy New York area. I can't really see from here. Yep. So you can see the center is just the green dot. Here's Chester County, same thing. We see it says Chester County Geo Carlson's technically what it's called. And the identifier here is MQS. Our weather is going to be at 126.25. Our airport 660 feet above sea level. We have pilot controlled night lighting there. Longest runway is 5,400 feet. And we talk to each other and get fuel on 122.7. So you can see all these airports around here are going to have a block of text, something like that, kind of describing just basic information. You get some quick stuff like frequencies. If you need to quickly divert somewhere, you have a problem, emergency, just a quick little snippet of what the airport has to offer for you.
It seems like ForeFlight SkyVector utilize color-coded symbols to indicate whether green for VFR conditions, blue for marginal VFR, red for IFR.
Yes, so those would be those. I think there was there
So
dots on there.
Because there's green up there.
Yeah, I'm guessing those are probably the
Okay.
VTARs. Yeah, because
Gotcha.
if you roll over it,
Yeah,
it shows you the
gotcha.
weather.
Okay.
Yep. So green is good usually, and then red and purple are bad, and blue is medium.
Green.
I don't know. Just green's good. Means that we can fly VFR right now. Though technically, even though it's VFR condition or VMC conditioned out there, the wind would knock us out of the sky pretty quickly. All right, so this kind of gives us that little overview, very rough idea of what this airport has to offer. The one we're going to get more information is called the Chart Supplement, or AFD, Airport Facilities Directory. This is going to be another document, essentially, and it's going to have, this is what it's going to look like. It's a little green book here, and this one's the Northeast, and it's going to have all the airports looking like this in here. So if you want to go to an airport, you should look up stuff like this, because it's going to tell you more specific information about the airport. So, oops. So if we kind of look at ours here, it's going to have a bunch of information. I'm not too concerned that you can read this quite yet, but just kind of show you what it's showing us. So once again, the name of the airport, our identifier, how to convert between UTC or Zulu time into local time. Got our airport elevation there and our coordinates. We have runway 11 and 29 here, just a single runway, 5,400 feet long by 100 feet wide, and we got grooved to asphalt ground. High intensity runway lighting, which we'll talk about later, and a 4% grade upslope facing eastward. Both runway 11 and 29 have REILs, the runway edge identifier lighting, BASIs and PAPIs, which we'll talk about later. Which the glide path is going to be 3 degrees on those. These are the what's it called? DC8. That's going to be how high above the runway you're going to cross if you descend at 3 degrees on these, and then trees. We have fuel, 100 low lead Jet A. Not to worry about oxygen there. Their lights working dusted on. To activate the lights, we use CTAF. Noise, we have a noise abatement procedure, which will be listed somewhere in here. We got migratory birds and deer. Helicopter ops, there's a Piasecki plant down there, so that's going to be not too operational yet, but we have a lot of helicopter traffic here in the future. We cannot hover taxi, which shouldn't be a problem for us fixed wing people. Hopefully. Blah, 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 a bunch of helicopter stuff there. Water towers, trees, whatever. So just some good information to know, and all your frequencies down here for weather and who to talk to and how to talk to Philly and everything. So much more in depth than that little block of text we had on the map. So if you're going to an airport, it's a very good idea, if not basically required, to look at a chart like this to kind of figure out more information. All right, we're talking about those NOTAMs now. Notice to Airmen is a notice that contains information essential of us, essentially as pilots, but it's something that is a problem or we need to know about, but has not quite made it to an official chart yet. So it's kind of like a little mini patch that hasn't been released yet. A couple different types of NOTAMs. We'll talk about what those are. There's three kind of main ones that we should actually know, and then the rest are kind of just extra. They can check online or by calling the flight service station. Most of us nowadays just check it online real quick and sort of usually by airport or local area. So you don't have to look at all the ones everywhere. Or you get one in what's called a weather briefing, which is what you do before you go flying. So you should know what NOTAMs are when you're by the time you're pilots, but now it's just nice, nice easy little shallow dive into it. All right, so NOTAM D, that's gonna be your first type of NOTAM. It's kind of important. These are gonna be basically rules you have to follow. Like I said, stuff that hasn't quite made it to an official chart yet, but you should be aware of. So in this case, a certain part of the taxiway is closed to aircraft with big wings, essentially, which would be quite kind of important to know if you decide to land in this airport. It could be stuff like, yeah, taxiways closed, it could be runways closed, it could be they're out of fuel, something like that. So kind of important for you to know this stuff, to check this before you go. So NOTAM D is going to be these stuff is closed usually. FAA rules you have to follow. Next type of NOTAMs get FDC. These are also quite important, but we don't have to deal with them as much as a VFR pilot. It's more for IFR stuff. But say if you're doing a certain landing, your minimums are changing for this VOR runway 26. So definitely didn't know about them, but not quite for the kind of flying we'll be doing, but no FDC is still also legally enforceable. Any other one you should probably know is the pointer NOTAMs. Basically, it's just saying, hey, there's an important NOTAM, you should probably go look at it. Yeah, it's pretty important when it says something like that. So commonly you'll get these, especially when there's like a presidential movement in the area. It'll say, hey, look at the presidential TFR down the street before you go flying. Even though it doesn't necessarily fall under our airport, it might fall at the airport next to us or, you know, in an airspace really close to ours. So it's just reminding you to kind of, you should probably check that. So the D, FDC, and pointer are the three main ones. A couple more we're going to talk about here, but I wouldn't say those are as important. SAA, Special Activity Airspace, is going to be something like an MOA is a military operations area. So if they're conducting some sort of aerial practice, usually refueling or, you know, dogfighting practice or whatever, they're going to put one of these out. So as long as you avoid these MOAs, which are marked on that big chart we talked about earlier, this shouldn't be necessarily a problem to you anyway. A UNOTAM, this is kind of like something if we had here, someone broke down on the runway or something, might throw one of these out real quick to say, hey, by the way, there's an airplane stuck here, before it's officially sent to the FAA and sent in, kind of like quick little side note. Once again, not super important to be aware of this one.
So what would happen in terms of that plane that crashed in Philadelphia, medical plane, and then the airport, well, they immediately close it down for make sure we have to check it out, make sure there's no hazard. Will there be a NOTAM posted immediately, or how would they actually?
I would say probably not immediately because you probably have to go through all this FAA paperwork to get one posted pretty quickly. But I'm sure, well, the tower first closes the airport. They probably put something out like this first, and then if I'm just assuming, I'm not even sure, but then I'm guessing then it would be put into a DNOTAM then. Best guess. Yep. And NOTAM, just another kind of just like little, hey, something's happening, not super important, but just so you know, there's not a house on fire, we're just controlling burning something. Military NOTAMs doesn't really matter to us. All right, let's talk about those ATIS and AWOS things we were talking about earlier. So when I was showing you the sky vector charts there, back on. Our AWOS is 126.25. So next question is, what is an AWOS? All right, they're a source of weather data that can be acquired over the radio at most airports, unless you're like really tiny or private airports, not going to have them. But most decently sized airports are going to have them. ATIS is going to be the towered version. AWOS is going to be the untowered version. So here we have an AWOS. This is what it looks like if you actually go out there and see it. It's on the kind of near the end of runway 29. It's just a tower here with a bunch of little instruments and wind gauges and sky observing stuff. AWOS stands for Automated Weather Observation System. And like I said, just a bunch of sensors to tell us what the weather is. A couple different types. Don't worry about this. It's just being a little technical there.
Question. So
yes, sir.
The AWOS, like tonight, the winds are 20, gusting 5, right? It would give you that info, but it wouldn't tell you shouldn't be flying tonight.
No one's ever going to tell you should or should not be flying. It's up to you as a pilot or whatever rules you're following. So glad you asked. Here's our current AWOS. Every minute it updates. So you can see winds 310. So that's what this is showing you at 25, gusting 35. Here at Chester County Aviation, our SOP says no flying at a maximum of 25 or above. So we are well above our allowed insurance maximum here. So it includes stuff like an altimeter setting, so you can know what the pressure is outside, temperature, dew point, humidity, and all this fun stuff here. So a quick little view at what the weather is basically at this moment.
Zach, Greenwich Mean Time.
That is, yes. Okay. Yes, everything's going to be in what's called Zulu or UTC time. Yeah, the Greenwich time.
Is that on the website?
Yes, actually, I could show you that real quick. Just here. So first of all, to find that AWOS up there, you go to our website, and then up here, MQS AWOS is where you'd find this site. It'll take you a direct link right to here. For our SOPs, if you go all the way to the bottom, we have the resources, and it's going to be all our documentation, essentially. SOP is the first link right there. And if you want to read any POHs or anything, those will be down here for all the different airplanes, checklists, all that fun stuff. And we also have a cool, it's not really related to our lesson, but we have this accident safety report thing. Basically, if you see anything unsafe, you can anonymously submit this report. And every month we go over all of them and figure out how we can fix the problem and make it safer. So anyone's allowed to submit these at any time. I usually submit probably like 1 or 2 a month at this point. ATIS, like I said, this is the counterpart that's at a tower. It's similar to that where they get a reading of weather, but then it's actually recorded by a person. And these ones are updated every hour. So they don't want to have a person reading every minute. It also includes stuff that's important, like, this runway is closed, this taxiway is closed, or we're using this runway to land right now if you have multiple runways. So it's imperative that you always listen to the ATIS or AWOS before going to any airport. Actually, our AWOS has most AWOSs and ATISs have phone numbers. So let me pull up Ford Flight here real quick. I don't know if this will be loud enough, but if I call our AWOS, it's just going to read out. So I was going over that stuff in the chart supplement we talked about before. All right, so just did our noise abatement procedure. Now he's going to start again, and it's going to read, in theory, this data.
Visibility more than 10. Sky condition clear below 2,000. Temperature 3 Celsius. Dew point -4 Celsius. Altimeter 3,0,0. 6 inches of mercury.
So basically all the stuff there, the wind might have just been a little different than what he reported there, but. So that's what it would sound like in the airplane. It just reads most of this data out for you and then any NOTAMs that are important for you to know. Let's see if I call Lancaster as well. There's going to be ADIS because they have a person reading it. Let's see if this works. So we have a rated one. So some of them have both. When you're listening in the air, it's always going to be the or if they have an ADIS, the ADIS. If they don't, it's going to be the AWOS. But if you call, sometimes they'll give you the AWOS, so you can get the right now information, not now ago information. Let's try another one. There's an ADIS because read by a person.
Reading tower will resume normal operations at 0600 local.
Start in a second.
Regional Airport Cali Staff Field. Automated weather observation. 325 Zulu. Wind 290 at 16. Peak gusts 33. Visibility 10. Light rain. Sky condition overcast 4,600. Temperature 04 Celsius. Dew point -04 Celsius. Altimeter 3005. Remarks. Density altitude -900. Red Tower ceases operations at midnight local time. Common traffic advisory frequency is Reading Tower 119.9. The pilot operated field lighting and
So the beginning there was still another AWOS is automated, but at the end there you can hear someone's actually reading out those NOTAMs just like here. In the ADIS, when you actually listen to the airplane, it'll give you a letter. So every hour when it's updated, it'll be a new letter. So it starts wherever it is, but it'll be Alpha, and then an hour later it'll be Bravo, then Charlie. So that way, when you talk to the tower, they know you actually got the most recent information and you're not performing using outdated information. Whereas the AWOS just runs all the time, so it doesn't really matter if you got one minute ago or 5 minutes ago, whereas something could have been updated at a tower airport you need to know about.
So if you were flying into this airport, would you actually set your radio to 126.25 and get the report that way?
Yes, sir.
Versus using your phone, you may or may not have reception of that. Right?
Correct. Yeah. Around here, you usually have reception up to about 4,000 feet or so. So usually you'd have about 1 bar, so you should be fine. But the correct way is to listen to the radio, and that's the fail-safe way, I guess. Yeah, because not everywhere is going to have cell reception. All right, let's talk about what these airports look like. So as many of you may have heard before, the way all runways are numbered is the way that they face. So runway 26 is going to be facing roughly 260 degrees. They're all based on magnetic direction. So as you see here, I'm going to take the first 2 digits. So this one's facing about 30 degrees, 260 degrees, 80 degrees, and 210 degrees. In our case, runway 29 is 293 degrees, so we just make it 29. All right, and then obviously they're going to be different by 180 degrees if they're both faced, assuming the runway straight, I guess. They're really 180 degrees opposite of each other. So one little trick that I was taught that works is to kind of figure out the opposite end of the runway. So for this example here, let's take 2, 6, and 8. So if we have number 2, 6, and someone's like, oh, what's the other side of that runway? You can either do math real quick and subtract 180 from 260, or you do the +2 -2 method. So if I take 2, 6, if I add 2 to 6 and -2 from, or add 2 to 2, subtract 2. I'm gonna draw this on the board. 2, 6. So I have to +2 and -2 somewhere. So if I do +2 and -2 there, I'm gonna get runway 44, which is 440 degrees. Doesn't make sense. That ain't it. So we're gonna do the -2 +2 here. That's gonna be 0, 8. Oh, wait. So just subtract 2 from one, add 2 to the other. That's gonna give you what the other end of the runway is. So down here we have runway 0, 3. You add 2, it'd be 2 and -3. -2 from 1 is gonna be 2, 1 there. Doesn't come out of my mouth very well, but yeah. Add 2 to 1, subtract 2 from the other, you get your number. Like I said, they're magnetic north. Not sure if you guys have gotten to the point yet, but there's a couple different norths here, magnetic and true north. Everything in our airplane is basically situated for magnetic north because back in the olden days, that was the only thing we can read. They couldn't decide where true north was. So that's kind of what we stuck with. So all these airport things are going to be based on magnetic north.
Getting back to the runway.
Yeah.
Are they actually very accurate in terms of the degrees? Or are they off, let's say, could it be 264 or 265? Do they round up, do they round down? Or
I've seen some ones that are not the best because the problem is that magnetic North Pole does move.
right.
So actually every once in a while I do have to rename a runway to the next number because it changed. Or if you have something like I think Dallas or basically any major airport where it has more than 3 parallel runways, they have to take like, okay, these are now 9s and these are now 10s. And they just say like close enough kind of thing. So no, it's not always perfect. For the most part, yeah, it's going to be pretty close, but yeah, sometimes they have to bend the rules a little bit, or they don't feel like going through all the paperwork to try to switch it by one number if it's 0.1 degree off or something. But yeah, they're pretty accurate.
That sometimes shows up in the green book, so,
Is that
Supplement?
the start supplement here?
yeah,
Possibly. I've actually never seen one where it's changed on me before, so I can't
Right.
speak personally on it.
like if like a runway is like a certain, it's either that or the other pubs.
Um,
It'll tell the actual. what the
Yeah.
actual-
Yeah, that'll show the actual. If we go back to the Chester County one, I think it shows it in there. Maybe not on this one. That'll be on the. I know it's on the taxi diagram.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think it's on this chart anywhere. Cause he had runway 29 to 293. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about the taxi diagrams later. Now, definitely have some on it. All right. So, airport diagram. Look at that. Of course, this one's a Jefferson one, so it's not a good one. Let me pull up a random taxi diagram. It's over here so I can see them. Yeah, so this is what a taxi diagram looks like. It's just a little bit better than the chart supplements there. You can see it says something like 219 degrees or 129 degrees there. So it does actually show you the exact degree of the runways. So this shows the runways. As you can see down here, the 3/6 runways, however you look at them. there, as well as all these different taxiways. As you can see, taxiways are all named as letters, or if you get to a big enough airport that has a lot of them, you can have multiple letters or letters and numbers, combinations, whatever. Actually, right here, you can see AA. Just a little bit more accurate of a chart here, which is especially important if you're going to land at a tower airport and they start to give you instructions like this you need to follow. So in this case, this example will show you if you're parked up here at A1, you're given the instruction to taxi to runway 21, which is that one, via Charlie, which is this guy here, turn left onto, or southwest on Charlie towards Delta, which is this one here, hang a left, cross runway 21, and then left on Golf again, and hold short of runway 21. So having one of these out at a tower airport is pretty important. I mean, it's important at an untowered, but since you have no one telling you what to do, you can only screw up so bad. Whereas if you're at a tower airport, you can do something illegal if you don't follow it well and have this chart at the ready. Most of the modern glass screens, like our Cessnas have the G1000s, you can actually zoom in really close and this pops up for you. So you can use that. It's not the best in the world. So I still have this chart up when I'm landing, but a lot of the modern systems have this built into them.
So you're coming into an airport and they give you this, like, that's a good bit of information there. Did you have like a knee board, something you like quickly
Oh,
put
yeah.
back down on? Okay.
There's two ways you can do it. One is you do shorthand, which is kind of what I prefer. So I'd write like 21 C SWD L X21 LG HS21, like quick shorthand like that.
Yeah.
Or the other way is you like I have my iPad I fly with all the time. I pull up my Apple Pencil, and as they're saying it, I'm just drawing the line right here and putting like a cross or an X there or something. Really, it's up to your personal preference as long as you know what shorthand you wrote. That's all that matters.
So you have like ForeFlight or something in this diagram on your iPad and you're literally just tracing
Oh, yeah.
over it? Okay.
Yep.
That's
Anything that works. Or you can print out and be old fashioned, have an actual paper copy of it, and do the same thing with a real pen. But I'm a child of the iPad, so I use that. First day of school, I went to Ohio State for aviation, and first day I showed up, they all handed us an iPad, and we're like, all right, this is what everything's gonna be on now. So I got really good at using those. Not so good at paper. And here's another example of a taxi diagram. You can see just a lot of cool stuff marked. So ramp areas here, you got fuel elevation there. Some other stuff, general aviation parking, so it's typically where we'll go when we're parking our airplanes. Fire station, where the control tower is located. Some other, you have elevation at the end of each runway, so you can kind of see if they're sloping to any degree or where you're expecting touchdown. Let's see here. Get their length and width of the runways. These BAKs, I believe those are arresting systems for military use. So they can throw out some like strings across if they need to and stop the airplanes. I remember looking that up a couple of months ago when I was teaching this lesson before. So they definitely get a lot more complicated the bigger of an airport you go to. Phonetic alphabet. Who wants to talk like a pilot? Get used to this. You definitely have to have the A through Z memorized as a pilot. You're going to use it all the time. The numbers, not so much. You hear the tower uses them. Air traffic control uses them a lot. But you don't hear many pilots. You don't hear a lot of pilots say tree or niner, Fife, stuff like that. Technically, it's the correct way, but it's one of those things that we kind of just gloss over a lot of the time. But you definitely use the phonetic alphabet all the time. And the reason we use it is because some letters can sound pretty close. You're not saying D as in dog, S as in start, something like that. We have set letters here, make it nice and simple for everybody. Where's Jeffrey back there? Is M still Nancy? I've flown with that man a few times. He kept saying Nancy, and I was like, that ain't it. November. I mean, there's different versions, but this is the aviation version, I guess, is the way.
Military uses this one, and police just use some random made up.
Throwing some Greek letters or something here and there. Yeah, so this would be, I guess, probably be official. This one you should know if you're a pilot.
Oh, yes.
They want to sound cool, so they just make up stuff. I'm not going to make you guys all practice this because you can practice on literally any word. You can just take this slide and practice on them. So not going to worry about practicing the phonetic alphabet. Actually, also, if you buy a knee board, which you'll have to eventually, most of these have the entire phonetic alphabet listed on here. So you'll have to memorize at some point. You probably will just accidentally by using it all the time. But you'll find it in a lot of places. All right, let's talk about taxiways, how we get from point to point on an airport surface. As you're taxiing, you're usually going to have a solid yellow line. A lot of mistakes I see first time people in an airplane, they'll think it's like a road and they'll try to taxi right over here. These are one ways. Taxi down the center, please. Put that nose wheel on the yellow. At major airports, they can have the double yellow lines here. I don't think we have double yellow lines here because we're a little bit smaller. It doesn't matter as much. But we have the solid yellow line down the center. We have these couple signs here. I think we're going to go into more detail here, but while I have a nice picture, I'll talk about them. The yellow kind of shows just where stuff is. We see runway 9 is straight ahead, runway 13 is to your right. This one's saying alpha is the crossing taxiway up here. And then yellow on black is where you're at. So you are currently on Bravo if you're assuming you're taxiing on this one. Taxiway lighting. We're going to have blue omnidirectional sign lighting, just means blue lights. Here we have this blue lighting along the edges of the taxiway. Fancier airports going to have this green center line lighting. We don't have that here. And I believe I had a professor one time say that they can actually, if it's a really fancy airport, they can control which lights are on or not. So like a really low visibility day, he said they're able to taxi in by just following the lights ahead of him, and they guided him right to his gate. I don't know if that's true, or if they can do that or not, but it sounds pretty cool. I believe it. But blues on the edges, and then in your nice fancy airport, you got green down the center. Runway hold markings. So how do we know where the runway begins and the taxiway ends? That's going to be these 4 yellow lines on the ground. 2 solid and 2 dashed. So if the solids are on your side, that means you are on the taxiway about to enter that runway. At a towered airport, you cannot cross these without getting clearance to cross them. If you have the dashes, that means you are on the runway side and you're about to enter a taxiway. Technically, anything beyond these lines is considered on the runway. So even this little space right here doesn't look like a runway, but it's technically runway environment there. So you're on the runway if you're on this intermediate section here, which is kind of weird because our airport, there's us right in here. These are the taxiway hold short lines. As you can see, they are nowhere near the actual, what you think of as the runway. But technically, this is all still considered runway stuff here. So in theory, only one airplane should be on the runway at a time. So technically, an airplane shouldn't be entering until the airplane just landed, is completely past these lines. Untowered, uncontrolled airports, lines get a little blurry there. But at tower airports, especially, technically, you are on the runway as long as you have not crossed that line with your entire airplane. Like I said, without, like here, we don't have towered, it's up to us. So basically, it's good practice to make a call before entering the runway. And you should definitely make sure everything's clear before you enter that runway. And we do, there's a couple different ways. I think all of our airplanes at this point have some way of seeing where other traffic are. It's not required to be able to see other airplanes from your airplane, I guess, with electronic means. So all of our airplanes at this point have a screen of some sort. You can see where everyone else is located around you. So we always check that, make sure no one's about to land or still on a runway. We visually look outside, make sure no one's obviously coming to land or anything or taking off. Then we make a radio call, listen for anybody else. So we kind of do 3 different ways to make sure the runway is absolutely clear before we enter the runway. Another way to identify where it begins is going to be these big flashy red signs. They indicate where the direction is, so you can see the 30 is on the left and 12 would be at the far end of the other side of the runway. Usually if you see red, you should think twice before you do something. It's kind of the way to think that. A couple of things here, they have, let's see. This one's when you're at the end, it only has the one side because you have no option of using 3-1 at that point. Holding position markings, that's going to be these single dashed yellow line. That's going to be these guys, I think. Position markings for taxiway. Oh, no, that's going to be back here. So back here's, you don't really see this very often, but they can tell you to hold at a taxiway. Yeah, so they tell you to hold short of whatever, I guess that's alpha and delta here. So they say hold short of alpha on delta, you'd stop before that line. As you can see here, this is, dang it. This back here doesn't have a runway, but they still have a whole position area here. This is because they might have a instrument landing system or something that you can be blocking or affecting if you try to enter this area. So there sometimes can be told to hold short of the 1-5 approach section. Basically, once again, if it says it's white on red, you should probably think twice before you're allowed to enter that, and you have to have clearance to enter that area. Exit sign, so that's going to be these little signs up there. It's basically just the exact same thing that's on the ground, just on the side as well. On the side. Like I said before, you have to make sure you pass the full set of lines before you're considered off the runway. Some other markings here. Chevrons, this is a no-go area. Essentially, it's you can't take off, you can't land, you can't taxi on them. Typically, this area is going to be like a really soft asphalt that's made to arrest your airplane if you overrun the runway. So if you ever see like the pictures of the airplanes with their wheels stuck in the ground, even though it looks like they should be fine, it's because they sunk into this runway arresting area. It's not always that way, but that's commonly what it is. Display thresholds, so down here, this is an area where you can take off, but you can't land on. You can take off, but you cannot land. Typically, it's because there's something like trees right here. So if you try to land in the beginning of the runway, you hit those trees. So they say, actually, you can't land until right here. Usually, it's nothing to do with the actual surface or anything, just because there's something in the way, or one reason or another. You can roll out after landing on it, so you can basically use it as a taxiway or takeoff area. X's indicate closed runways. So if you have a big airport that had too many runways, they couldn't sustain them all or something, they sometimes close them, lack of funding sometimes. They'll just paint X's across them. They can paint them, or they can, if it's a temporary closure, they'll put like looks like a portable generator cart with a big red X light on top of it too. Which once again, this should be in the NOTAMs if it's usually an active runway. But if it's temporary closed, that'll be in the NOTAMs somewhere. You can see yellow up here, that's taxi only. Then there's display special, we can take off or taxi. So yellow is the taxiing area only. Couple different signs also you can see on the sides. So you have our mandatory ABCD. Once again, red stuff you should probably think about before you cross that area. Location, this shows you, once again, yellow and black is where you're at. Information signs, we have no examples of here. We'll see them later. Direction, IJK, so they'll show you how to get to somewhere. So here we'll have one of these terminal signs. Destinations, once again, terminals where we're going usually. Distance remaining, I'll always remember this one till the day I die because I got that one wrong on my private pilot check ride. So you never forget what you get wrong. And I answered that saying, oh, I'm on taxiway 4. What an idiot. So that is how many How many thousands of feet are remaining on your runway? So 4,000 feet in this case are left.
Can you go back?
Yeah.
What's H?
Hold short. Okay, so hold short one. So I might say hold short with a hold short area.
Well, the H on the top.
Oh, on the top. That's going to be one of those ILS critical areas.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's one of those approach. So something like this.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a red sign because it's not a mandatory. It'd be a yellow sign, but it'd say ILS hold short area. And the FAA, of course, has a full document describing all these different kinds of things. If you want to read more in depth about them. All right, let's talk about those mandatory instruction signs, big red ones. Red with white description, usually a runway. So in case here you got runways, a critical area such as the approach one here, or a prohibited area. So you might see that if it's like a service road or something that vehicles can drive on, but you can't taxi on. Location, once again, yellow and black is where you're at. It says where you are. So here's a little example here. We are on Alpha because it's yellow on black, and then all the others are showing us how to get to the different taxiways from this intersection. Yes.
There was a red one that had ILS on it. Was that like denoting that that's an ILS runway, or is that this is not an ILS runway?
That is what this gentleman was just saying with that with one of these guys. This will be on the ground, the ILS will be on the side. What you are allowed to normally pass it unless you're specifically told by the tower to hold short the ILS critical area. That is because your airplane could be blocking the signals for that ILS on the runway. So yeah, you could be getting in the way of the ILS. Nation, pretty simple, shows you how to get where you're trying to go. Information signs. This is the one we didn't have an example of before, basically just giving you some sort of information. In this case, shows you some sort of VOR frequency. Commonly, you get the noise abatement ones. They'll say, after departure, turn this heading or avoid overflight of this neighborhood or something. Or yeah, any kind of thing that might be useful. So you should be able to find this stuff somewhere in the chart supplement, but assuming you didn't look at that, these will give you really important stuff. And my dreaded runway distance remaining signs, black background, white numbers, and how many feet are left in thousands of feet. All right, any questions on the signage there? Like I said, a lot of the stuff, if you fly an airplane, it's second nature, you'll see this stuff all the time. All right, lighting. So it gets dark outside, we can't see those signs as well anymore. Let's see what kind of stuff we got to help us out. First one's gonna be the beacons. So I think we talked about this before. That's what that star on the chart means. It has a beacon. So it makes it a little easier to find at night, especially in an emergency situation. If something goes wrong, you just look out on the horizon and look for the nearest flashing beacons. They have different patterns based on what kind of airport they are. So civilian airports, we have a two-color one that is green and white. So green, white, like this. I don't know if you guys ever noticed when you park in a parking lot, look above our hangar, you can see the giant rotating beacon, which should be on by the time we leave today. It should be flashing green and white. Military flash green, white. And then you can see these heliports are green, yellow, white, and seaports are going to be white, yellow. Not super important to know. It is important to know what you're looking for if you're going to an airport we can fly into. And it also is very important to know that do not go to a yellow airport. You will not probably survive a yellow airport. So if you have any emergency situation, as long as you see greens and whites, you're fine. Don't see any yellows. Like I said, an emergency, you can do whatever you need to meet the nature of the emergency. So if you need to land out of the military, you can do it. Just be prepared to do some paperwork. But paperwork is better than have someone trying to figure out your funeral paperwork. Do what you need to do. Don't land in yellow. You actually be surprised too. I like flying at night all the time, but There are a lot more airports out there than you think. You just look out there, just all these flashing whites and greens in the distance. It's actually pretty cool. Makes you feel a little safer at night. Most of them turn on automatically between sunset and sunrise. And if it's running during the day, it means you probably shouldn't be flying. I remember going to my airport in Ohio State. You'd be all excited to fly. You drive out there, you see the beacon going, you say, "Oh, turn around and go back home." Probably should check the weather before I left my house. Too excited. Like you talked about before, airport with a small star shows as a beacon, so you see a little star down there, and this one does not have a beacon. This one's not super important, but basically anything around an airport that's tall is going to have a red light on it, so you don't hit it. Everything above 200 feet AGL. Don't worry about that or anything. They're not going to ask you specifically how high a building has to be before it qualifies for a red aviation light. All right, other kind of runway lighting. Runway lights, if the airport has them, it's going to be white lights on the edge of the runway, called runway edge lighting. Tower controllers will automatically turn them on for you, or when it's bad visibility, or an airport like here, we can control them. And the beginning of the runway is going to have green, the end of the runway is going to be red, and they're bi-directional lights. So depending on which direction you're looking at them from, they'll change color. So you know where the beginning and the end of your runway is. So here's a little pictorial example of that. So you've got green for the beginning, and red for the end, and the whites down the side. And you can actually see some of the blue taxiway lights along the edge too. Let's see here. We got RCLS, which is going to be the runway center line lighting here. Let's see, these are white. Wait, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about threshold lights. These are center line lighting. So the center line is going to be the white center there. They're going to be white until basically as you get closer to the end of the runway, you're going to start alternating red and white. So you know you're running out of space. And then the final 1,000 feet is going to be all red. So hopefully your airplane's relatively slow by that point. So 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. They'll start slowly going from less white and more red. Touchdown zone lighting, that's what these guys are. 2 rows of lights. We don't have centerline or touchdown zone here. We just have the edge and then the red and whites at the end here. Basically, this is where you're supposed to land the airplane. Runway guard lights. This is something we also don't have here, but a lot of towered airports and bigger airports are going to have. Basically, just little yellow lights before you enter a runway. They're going to be just flashing left and right. Make sure you're really sure you're supposed to enter that runway before entering it. You'll usually see these out if you guys do a lot of air travel. You look out your window, especially like Philly or something, or any major airport, you're going to see these at the beginning of every runway. So, how do we know if an airport has lights? That's going to be that little uppercase L in the center there. And it means that it's operated from sunset to sunrise. The asterisk means that there's limitations of some sort. Most commonly, the asterisk means that we control it. It's not always, but basically the rule of thumb, 99% of the time, if you have an asterisk, that means that it's pilot controlled, which we'll talk about how to control it in a second. And once again, if you go to the chart supplement, where all your information is, it will say activate medium intensity runway lighting for runway 725 and PAPI, which we'll talk about later, on CTEF. So how do we actually activate said lights? We key the microphone button on the appropriate frequency. So we have 3 intensities, low, medium, and high. If we have all 3, you click it 7 times. Within 5 seconds, it'll put on high. 5 seconds or 5 times within 5 seconds is medium, and 3 times within 5 seconds is low. So it's funny because you're flying around at night, you'll just hear click, 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 and they'll be like, oh, someone's turning on some runway lights. And yeah, basically, what kind of the way I do it is when I'm far away from the runway, I do 7 times to kind of find the runway at night. Then the closer you get, you kind of turn it down, because if you're on final and you're being blinded by these high intensity runway lights, it's really hard to see the runway, especially if it doesn't have that centerline lighting or anything like ours. So when I turn final to come and land, I usually do 3 clicks, lower it, and I can see a little better. And I usually stay on for about 15 minutes, so it's common practice. Every time you do a lap in a pattern, if you're practicing landings, you reset them again. Or else they might turn off on short final like movie Airplane. That's my favorite movie, by the way. Nothing compares to that kind of humor. All right, let's talk about how you can land at night safer. We have something called a VASI, Visual Approach Slope Indicator. This is what it looks like. It's going to have this 2-bar VASI system. It's red or white lights. Basically, red means you're low, white means you're high. So you want to have 2 of each. You want to have 1 red or half red, half white means you're a good. All red, you're dead, and all white, you're in the sky. Red doesn't mean you're dead, it just means you're low. I should clarify that. If you see 4 reds, you're not done for. It means you should probably correct for it. So this is what it looked like in a real airport. I believe in our chart supplement there, it said that runway 11 has a VASI, so this is what it looks like coming into land on runway 11. So in theory, you should have white over red. Technically, you're legally supposed to be flying at or above 1 white or half white, half red. What it does for you is it protects you as long as you're within, if you have half white, half red, within 4 miles and 10 degrees, you should not be able to hit anything. And this usually extends a lot further than that. This is kind of like the bare minimum to be certified has to have this. More commonly, a lot further than that. The way I like to say, if I can see those lights, that means there's nothing between me and those lights. So I shouldn't be able to hit anything. So at night, as long as you basically are on the slope, assuming you're not hitting like a mountain or something miles away from it, you'll be fine. And this is important information, just kind of just so you know. You can also get a 3-bar VASI if it's a bigger airport that can take larger airplanes. You know, like heavier aircraft might use a higher glide slope of 3.25 degrees instead of our typical 3-degree slope that we do for our airplanes. And you can see there's 2 different glide slopes there. If you have more whites, you can take the higher one. If you have more reds, you can take the lower one. Doesn't really matter for us because our little airplanes can maneuver like crazy all over the place, so we can really do ever. I don't know if I've actually ever seen a 3-bar VASI, to be honest. But when you have a bigger airplane with jets that take forever to spool up, you might be on a certain one. Happy precision approach path indicator. Same concept here, red and whites. The more whites you have, the higher you are. The more reds you have, the lower you are. In our case, though, we can actually have 3 reds and 1 white, or 3 whites and 1 red. So it's a little more precise. That's why it's precision. Just tells you if you're just off or if you're right on or anything. So just a tad more precision with it. Runway 29 here. So that end, when you're coming to land, you'll have a PAPI. Coming in runway 11, you'll have the VASI. Once again, there's some sort of obstacle clearances, but as long as I have them in sight, I know there's no mountains between here and anywhere further east of us. So as long as I see them, I know I'm good here. Tricolor VASI, another kind of variant of them. I've actually never seen one of these, but essentially green means you're good, white means you're high, red means you're low. And pulsating VASI, definitely never seen one of these. So steady white means you're on path, pulsing white means you're high, steady red means you're low, and when it's flashing at you red, you're really low. Should probably fix that. Once again, never seen this one or the tricolor. I think they're probably older. I don't know. PAPIs and VASIs are what you're going to see most of the time. Oh, I guess that's about it. So at nighttime, basically when you go into an unfamiliar airport, I always make sure that they have a PAPI or VASI system of some sort, otherwise you have no idea what's there. Guess kind of a personal minimum of mine, keeps me alive. All right, nice quick lesson today. Anyone knows what this one is? I know what this one is for sure. It is Charlie. Thank you guys for using the phonetic alphabet. Nice practice there. Distance remaining, 3,000 feet remaining on this runway. All right, what would tell me there's a taxiway closure all the way from the beginning? Yep, NOTAM D, that's going to be something like taxiway or runway closure. FDC NOTAMs are going to be something like a instrument approach that's been changed to some way or something. And then the pointer NOTAMs are going to point you to something else. When can you land at a private airport? Little uncertainty today. C. And I slipped in that earlier. If you have an emergency, you can do anything you need to do. Obviously, assuming that it makes sense. Like if I have a radio failure, I'm not going to go land at Dover just to have fun. But if my engine's on fire, I'm landing on an aircraft carrier if I need to, you know. So emergency, that's always an option. And then if your buddy owns the airport and they say you can land, sure, head on in. What type of signs are these? Yeah, remember red probably means you should think about what you're doing there. They're mandatory to comply with. That's all I got for you today. Nice simple lesson there, just looking at a bunch of cool pictures. Make sure you signed in if you haven't already, so I get you guys your attendance in. Other than that, have a good day. Nice to teach you guys for once.